good because I wasn't recording. So welcome
Oh,
back.
hi.
And I'm going to turn the time over to Lisa. Have fun, everybody. I'm here in the background. I'm alive. I'll help you out however
He's going to take a quick nap. He'll be
I
back in a
can.
few minutes.
All right, see you
So
soon.
yeah, jump in, Philippe, if you have anything, that based on what you've already mentioned, that you think might be, reaffirming to what you've already said, or different than if I say something that's different.
Okay,
All right,
great.
everybody, it's nice to see some familiar faces, and I'm my goal is not to actually blow your mind. That would make a big mess. My goal is to simplify and clarify this very thorny topic of vocal registers. And I come. Let's pull this puppy up again. If you're new, if you haven't seen, I guess I have to go here to get rid of those floating meeting controls. Um, and I'll pull this up. I come from 60 years of interest in voice. And so my first introduction to the topic of vocal registers was probably in 1962 or 63. Um, so I've been through the mill, so to speak. I've I've had a lot of input over the years, and I've changed my views about vocal registers. And I did about 20 years of the Total Singer workshop, and I may do it again, but I definitely put my time in for the Total Singer workshop, which was a 3-day workshop. And when I look back at my how I taught registers, I could see how I was struggling to fit what I was saying within the classical context that so many people have grown up in. And so I'm going to present to you a very new, novel, innovative, and I think it's on the right track. I'm still doing research on this topic using a mostly high speed videography, which strangely shows things in ultra slow motion. So let's get in again. My goal is to demystify it, and I hope it won't be too confusing for you. And that it'll allow you to try things in new ways and to follow up on what Philippe has already mentioned. I've been told by him is that we're going to focus on the vocal folds and not on resonance as determinant of your vocal of what a vocal register is. Though most teachers still think of vocal registers as the sound that comes out of your mouth, I'd like to introduce the idea that that you can do a lot that can might confuse a listener. But I always want my singers to know what their vocal cords are doing. So over the years, there have been these terms. Um, I've even in Europe, I have an Italian colleague who has one register he calls M1 M/M2, which is to me an attempt to modernize M meaning mechanism or mode. But anyway, I'll explain more of this stuff. And the whole idea of mixing registers, and this is relatively new, but uh, the background really comes from a long time ago by the famous writer on vocal technique, maybe the very first one. His name was Manuel Garcia, all the way back in 1840. And actually really like his definition as of a register, which, by the way, comes from organs, the sound of organ stops that they would pull out to make different sounds. But what he says is that a vocal register is a series of consecutive and homogeneous tones going from low to high. Here's the key: produced by the same mechanical principle. So I'm going to say that means the vocal folds, and whose nature differs essentially from another series of tones, equally consecutive and homogeneous, produced by another mechanical principle. If he's talking about mechanical principle as what the vocal folds are doing, I'm all in with this almost 200-year-old definition. In 2009, there was this very important paper that came out. And I've worked with these people over the years in France, and they they were introducing this idea that a vocal register might be considered as a laryngeal vibratory mechanism. But it's not just the larynx, it's really technically because the larynx isn't vibrating, it's the vocal folds that are vibrating. But then this is quite old, and I'm sure we all look back on our papers or our work and go, "Oh, I wish I had said it differently." So this is the traditional, the new part. The new part is that this paper has led to the use of the terms M1, meaning mode or mechanism, for chest voice, and M2 for head voice. And not everybody uses this, but I actually like these terms a lot because it focuses on what are the vocal folds doing that is different from one another. And so these terms of using the M have been adapted. It's still classical, but it's been adapted to M0 being vocal fry, M1 being chest voice or modal register, like the one I'm using right now, and then head voice or falsetto or loft register would be M2, and M3 could define what the vocal folds are doing in whistle register. But notice that they're still pitch based, meaning M0 vocal fry is still considered the lowest part of the vocal range. M1 are for low notes, M2 is for high notes, and M3 is higher than that. And I've discovered by experimentation and inspiration by some other singers that you can do M0 on high notes, you can do M1 on high notes, you can do M2 on low notes, and you can do M3 on very high notes, but you can take it down somewhat. And I can't do whistle. I don't believe that whistle can be learned. It can be discovered if you do already have it. Some I work with and I'm friends with some of the whistle register teachers in the world, and I have yet to be able to produce a whistle sound. And even though they say I should be able to, I can do so much with my voice, but I can't do whistle. So I do believe that not everyone can do it. But this is not a whistle register presentation. So traditional pitch model of registers, as I just mentioned, was that they're still thought of as vocal fold vibrational patterns that are based on pitch. So it still conflates, meaning mixes, confuses even pitch with vocal register, meaning if I'm high, then it must be M2, and it's not true. If it's low, it must be M1, but it's not necessarily true. And then there's a traditional resonance model of registers, meaning if it sounds like head voice in the resonance, then it must be head voice. And that's not true either. I'll make a sound for you that's M1. It's chest voice. It's you can okay. I forgot it that I put this in. Did you know that your sound from your vocal tract, meaning your throat, your mouth, and your nose, that's your vocal tract, it can be separated from the laryngeal vibratory pattern. So I can do a chesty sound in head voice, and it would sound like this. But the chords are still in M2, head voice. And a heady, this is the one that confuses people the most, a heady timbre sound, resonance, can be produced in chest voice. If you've never taken it up high, you think you're in head voice because it sounds light or you feel vibration in your head, but it's still, oops. So that didn't work. So I have to try to go back to, how do I want to go back to,
I mean, the
how do I,
presentation didn't advance. I'll just stop the screen sharing. Sometimes that helps, and then restart.
okay, and I'll come back to here and I'll go back to, oh, it made my presentation go away. Interesting. Okay, well, there it is. Yeah, I've got to make a note to find out how to make that so when people come on, it doesn't, maybe you
Ah,
could do that too, Philippe, that it doesn't, what is it doing?
is changing your screen?
Yeah, it's changing. It's related to my screen share. It's
Hmm.
changing my screen.
Okay.
So here's an example of M1 where I feel, I make it sound like head voice, but it isn't. Hey, hey, hey. And a lot of people would say, well, that's head voice. But my vocal cords are telling me that it is not. So another thing I think it's important to do if you want to master vocal registers is to separate it from where you feel vibration. Now, in traditional vocal pedagogy, vibration is called resonance, but resonance is not vibration. So there's two things in resonance. One is how you shape your vocal tract, and separately, how where you feel vibration. So it's not all resonance. It's where, because you can feel vibrations, they change as you go higher. So where you feel at the bottom here, where you feel vibration is primarily based on how high or low you are. So the higher you sing, the more you might feel vibration in your head. It doesn't mean you're in head voice. Likewise, the lower you sing, the more vibration. I start to feel vibration in my neck and my chest, but my chords are in head voice. So that's why it's good, I think, to get away from chest voice, because a lot of people think chest voice is always low, it's always heavy, it's always loud. It's not true. It's just this sound, the talking sound or the calling sound or the yelling sound. Even if I whisper like that, very softly, it's still an M1. Likewise, where you feel vibration, whether it's in your hard palate or your forehead or the back of your head or your scalp, doesn't mean you're in head voice if you feel vibration up there. So we're going to really focus on vocal folds, what they are actually doing, which I have some unique in the world video to show you coming up, and also what it feels like. Most singers can learn to feel their vocal folds, and that's really helpful when you can determine vocal register by the information the vocal folds are giving you, whether it's a sound or whether it's a feeling that you can actually feel them doing. And then you can do all different kinds of things, as Philippe has mentioned to you, with your resonance. So here's some basic ideas about what's the difference between M1 and M2. You can think of M1 as talking, yelling, whispering, calling, anything on any pitch that sounds like you're talking. And if you're classically trained, you're not used to taking this talking sound up high, but you can. And that's the basis of commercial music. So that means pop, rock, jazz. Though they may use, jazz singers can use head voice and pop singers can use head voice. One of the ingredients of commercial styles, musical theater belting styles, is that they take a talking or yelling sound up higher than women would in where they would go quite low into head voice. So how do we get in touch with our head voice? Well, you can think of an owl, whoo, 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 and then just try to do that on different pitches. Whoo, whoo. Try to take it really low, go really high. Whoo, whoo. Don't think it has to be high, though it often is. Giggling. That's M2. Monty Python, I need to get this, need to get the video back, but it's funny because they're pretending to be old ladies, and so they do it in this M2. And also the famous TV cook Julia Childs, oh, we're going to do, so in fact, back in the 60s and 70s, different classical women voice teachers that I had were under the impression that this was a good way to speak. It was good for the voice. But then when I was teaching so much in the 90s, I'd have several older female voice teachers say, I don't have my high, their voice was weak. They had been thinking mistakenly that speaking in M2 was good for the voice, and they had lost the strength of the vocalis muscle because M2 doesn't use as much vocalis contraction, and they just had shaky, weak voices with cracking in it, and they didn't know how they did. So we worked on very low, very loud chest voice just to get that back because they were imbalanced. So I promote this idea that they're, instead of thinking vertically about registers, you can think horizontally. So these are the notes of my range I talked about this last time, from a low A2, to a C sharp 6, a high C sharp. And I can do any of these notes in either. Chest, also known as M1, head and falsetto to me are the same mechanism. Some people think of falsetto, the term is used only for men. Other people think falsetto is a weak, breathy version of head. It doesn't matter. It's all M2. It's much simpler to not separate head and falsetto. And to confuse it even more, there were some teachers I encountered, not many, who were teaching head in men as a light, high chest voice because they could feel vibration in their head. Talk about confusing. So I thought, well, that's, people are going to walk away. They'll know less than they came in with. Now, M1 has often been observed as having the following. I say often because there may be exceptions. But for the most part, M1 has been observed with my research as having the vocal fold clapping. They're clapping. Kind of like batteries that are going, not batteries, what I mean is magnets. They have that look like they're really attracting each other. M1 also has shown parallel closure, so that when they close, it's like this, but just so you can see more clearly that when they close where the front and the back is more likely to close at the same time. They've been shown to have a faster vocal fold closing speed. This is a new finding we came up with on some research I'll show you. So that was consistent on all the notes of my range, M1. So all the notes, I did like 41 semitones, 41 pitches. They all showed that the closing speed, the speed with which they come together was faster in M1 on every note of my range. That was a new and exciting finding. Longer closed phase, for the most part, not always. If you do that's what I'm going to check into next, is what if I do M1 up high and I make it breathy? Does it have a longer closed phase? It may not, but I am hoping to see clapping. I'll keep you all posted. But traditionally, it's thought that M1 has a longer closed phase. They're closed longer than they are open each cycle, and that they have a thicker vocal fold edge compared to M2. M2 has often been observed as having sort of an undulating action, what I call a sea creature. And this was the closest thing I could find to a sea creature. And that the closure is often asymmetrical, meaning that the front and the back may not close at the same time. So it's sometimes called zippering. We're seeing a consistent, slower vocal fold closing speed. We're seeing, I didn't talk about the magnets, but you know how magnets repel each other? That's what I want you to take a look at in the videos I'm about to show you. So instead of the M1 magnets attracting like that, look for the way the magnets are repelling. I had never seen that before, and I was very excited to see that. M2 is often equated with a longer open phase, meaning every time they open and close, they're open longer than closed, but there may be exceptions, and that M2 in general has a thinner vocal fold edge than M2 has a thinner vocal fold edge than M1. So the paper, this was the work I did with Dr. Jan Svets and Hugo Leou, who is now Sarah Leou, who's a brilliant postdoc, and I've got her here now at UCLA in Los Angeles. So I'm very, very happy that she's just brilliant. So this is our paper. Sarah wrote, and it's my best thing I've ever done in terms of science, and I'm so proud of it. And if I never write another paper, well, that's unlikely. But if I never wrote another paper, I'm happy that this came out. So here are little brief snippets so you can see some of the action I've been talking about. So, oh, I should have put M1 and M2, but I just grabbed this from another presentation. So chest means M1. So you can see the clapping action. They're closed. This is a low C. This is the C below middle C with what's called high-speed photography, which again is ultra, you can see things as they really are in slow motion. It's very hard to find these cameras. They're very expensive, and they're not used by voice doctors. So if you go to a voice doctor and you get your vocal folds looked at, they will be using stroboscopy, which is an approximation of what the vocal cords look like, and it's pink and there's sound. There's no sound, and they're gray, unfortunately. Okay, and so that's, duh, okay, I forgot I put that little sound in. So that's me doing a C3 in this M1 sound. Here's head voice, or M2, and then there'll be, see, there's undulation. There's actually a little space in the front, which of the vocal folds, right there. There's a little space, which is interesting. And this is what it sounded like. So there's a lot more air coming through on that one. A C4 is middle C. You can really see the clapping. You can see the thick edge. I have a little bit of asymmetry. Doesn't make a difference in the sound, meaning like my left one seems a bit stronger than my right, so sometimes the left one comes in early and it sort of pushes the right one along, but there's no difference in the sound. So if you ever have asymmetry but you sound fine, don't worry about it. So quite a different look. Look for the way the magnets, the vocal folds, look more like they're, what's the word, repelling. You can see that it's called the posterior glottal chink. So there's going to be more air coming through. By the way, when I made these sounds, I tried to make them as similar as possible, and I tried not to involve my vocal tract, just the vocal folds. So again, it sounds very chesty, right? But it's not. Okay, let's go to C5. Now, C5 is the C above middle C. And of all the videos, these look the most alike and they sound the most alike. And I think this is what has led to this idea of a third register or a blending of the two. But if you look carefully, you will see a difference. And I think it's important to think that way, that they can sound the same, but they're not the same. They do not feel the same. So you can hear there's a slight difference. The M2 doesn't have as much intensity in the sound because there's less flesh flapping. The cords are the edges are a little thinner, and they're not flapping. They're not vibrating as much, and so the harmonics there are fewer harmonics being generated in this particular sample. And then one of my favorite ones is high C, because nobody's looked at that, to my knowledge. And here's M1. A little under the pitch, but that tends to happen. I have to work at really, have to think sharp, because the chord is thicker and it tends to lower the pitch. Here's M2. See, they're hardly touching at all. So I think that's, this is my version of thrilling. All right, moving on. I'm going to be on my soapbox for the next 3 minutes, if that. I have battled with the term mix my whole life. And I don't think it's a good way to think about having smooth registered transitions. I have 16 I've amassed, and there's probably more definitions that I've encountered even recently. So I go to these conferences. I'm in Germany for a conference in 2 weeks, and then I'm in Spain. People talk about mix, and I don't know what they mean, and I don't know if they know what they mean. So here are just some of the meanings. Now, in the pop world, those who teach mix are often mean a higher pitch, light chest voice, because they're under the impression that chest voice is low, loud, and heavy, which I think is not the best way to think about it. But I have a colleague, a very successful colleague, who she uses the word mix to mean actually, let me demonstrate. I wasn't intending to, but I'm going to do it and just show you these two. So number one is the hey, 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 hey. They'll call that mix. Maybe. Again, I have yet to find a colleague who can explain to me exactly what they mean by mix. I see eye rolling and like nobody challenges them on it. And my friend who has written some wonderful books and instructional material, but she comes from the classical world, and so she thinks of mix as what some might call a head mix. E, 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 a lower pitch, strong head voice. Well, if you're a pop singer, you're not going to use that sound. So I think it's not good. Some people think of mix as a third register, which somehow blends the two together. And this is a very common thought in the classical world. Some people use the word mix to mean just not having a break. I'm singing, your mix is very good there. You have an even register transition. This is similar to the first one, a speech-like medium volume chest voice on a higher note. No, 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 no. So it's just a bit louder than the first one that I showed an example of. Or if it's a chest voice with a thinner vocal fold, singing in your mix, head voice with a thicker vocal fold, just singing it all in your middle range and not knowing which register you're in. Some people call it, oh, you're in your mix, meaning you're singing on those notes. A lighter, softer timbre in high M1. Again, very similar to number 1 and number 5, but this is how they might explain it, with less resonance and less adduction, closure of the vocal fold. There's more. An adjustment of simultaneous vocal elements. This is a direct quote from recently when I was in Istanbul. This is a quote that I think is crazy and confusing. That mix is an adjustment of simultaneous vocal elements such as laryngeal mechanism, volume, timbre, and larynx height. Oh, that's a bucket of stuff. Here's another quote. Mix is correctly directed airflow to the appropriate resonance space with controlled compression from the vocal folds throughout the entire vocal range. Okay, that's not even a register thing. I don't know what that, I don't know. I don't know what that is. I just wrote it down. Chest voice with sensations of vibration felt in the bones of the head might be called head mix. But it's not. If it's chest voice in the vocal folds, it's M1. It's chest voice. A balancing. This is very commonly taught at universities. That mix is a balancing or co-activation of CT and TA muscles. That stands for cricothyroid and thyroid and arytenoid muscles. The TA muscle is often called the vocalis. And I like it because it's got vocal in it and it doesn't take as much time to say it. So vocalis and TA, specifically what's called the medial TA, the TA on the edge, because there's a lateral one. Maybe you've learned this, that there's another TA muscle that we're starting to learn about. Does it play a part in singing? And some people are saying, yeah, it does. It's not just for grunting and coughing. And anyway, there is this going on all the time when you raise pitch. But how to do it, I don't know. You can't feel your CT muscle. You can feel your TA, your vocalis muscle. And I teach I teach vocal fold thickening and thinning, because you can feel your vocalis muscle, but not the CT. So, okay, that sounds really good and scientific, but how to do it, I don't know. How to teach it, no idea. Singing on the notes around the passaggio, that's similar to the earlier one. That's just you're in your mix range of having a smooth transition. But what I've found overall with the people who are, who come from the Seth Riggs school, who I worked with in the 80s, this SLS method, he was really one of the first to popularize this term. Um, and then there's the IVTOM, that's an organization in Europe, and I've presented for them. I've been asked to contribute to books on mix. I go, are you sure you want me to talk about really but they said, yes, please. So I do, and I try to be nice. But what my overall feeling about mix is that if a teacher doesn't really know what's going on or how to fix it or how to explain it, you put it in a bucket and you call it mix. And by the way, when I was on tour with a few years ago, a 67 show tour, as a backup singer, I asked the two singers I was with who make their living as session singers in Los Angeles, so they're on television, they're in commercials, they're in movies. I said, have you ever heard of the term mix? And both of them said no. And that was very telling. They just make the choice, one or the other is my byline. Pick one or the other depending on the style you're singing or the effect that you want, but you don't combine them. Here are some hand gestures. The first one is life-changing. The second one can be useful, but I really have had such good response in international workshops on this one little gesture. So let's say you want to thicken or thin your vocal fold. Most people need to thin the vocal fold, but without changing registers. Meaning, if I want to do M1 and I want to go up to a very high note or my highest note, you take your thumb. You could try this at home. I can't see you, by the way, because of the way my screen is set up. Everybody can see. Philippe, is everything looking good?
Yes, everything
Okay.
looks great.
Okay, good. So you take your thumb and you put it at the level of your vocal cords, which is right there. Don't touch your neck. Just put it a few inches. And what you're going to do, and it takes a lot of support to do this, chest up, upper belly's going to firm out. The magic spot's going to firm out. You put the belter's bite on, and the cheeks are lifted, and the chewing muscles are engaged, and the chin is protruding. So hopefully you've all seen my last couple of presentations, so you know about support and you know about belter's bite. And so here's an example of going hey, I'm still talking. This is a great exercise and worth practicing, but some people need individual help with it. So we're going to go into this in more detail during my Wednesday. What's the name of this review course? You've got this
Wednesday.
nice.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Review, clarify, deepen.
Right. And so we're going to work on this so I can work with you individually more on how to thin the vocal cord without going into head voice. I can do the same siren all in M2. So this is what it would sound like. So I'm still thinning the vocal fold, but I'm in M2. And if I want to thicken the vocal fold, you can take your index finger, same place, and you can actually feel a change on the top of your vocal folds. You can actually feel movement as though somebody's going forward, like you're going to feel more as you thicken. You can feel it as though someone's touching or bunching up the front part of the vocal fold. Here's an M1. Ah! Oh, let me do it. Think about it again. Ah! Or an M2. Ah! Now, when you do a low M2, it feels quite different in the vocal folds. It feels floppy. And in M1, when you descend pitch, it feels thicker. It feels more like you're making little fists in the front. Here's M1 again. Ah, ah. It's a very different feeling and quite intense. The vocal folds are quite thick and they're generating a lot of harmonics. So it's creating an intensity of harmonics. So we're getting towards the end of it. So what I want to present to you, if you, like me, have been confused about what a register is, I want to introduce and popularize the idea that vocal registers can be thought of as vocal fold vibrational patterns, not laryngeal mechanisms necessarily, but very specifically vocal fold vibrational patterns, and that almost all people, not all, but almost all, can learn to feel M1 and M2 in your vocal folds. And sometimes you'll feel changes in the larynx as well. The different kinds, and I talked about this last time, different kinds of tilting or what I call laryngeal lean. So you may feel changes also, but the goal of this workshop and of Wednesday is, can you learn to feel your vocal folds? By the way, you know, when I just did the sirens, you can do, and I think when I work with you individually, there'll be 4 sirens that I want you to experiment with. One is the M1 siren, up and back, up and down. The M2 siren, up in pitch, down in pitch. The traditional classical one, which is M1 on the low notes, M2 on the high notes, back into M1 with no breaks. That would be like this. Ah! So you're smoothly going from M1 to M2 for the high notes and back to M1. But there's also a 4th one, which is possible, though it's not something that you may ever do in your life. But that would be, as you maybe have guessed it already, is M2 on the low notes to M1 on the high notes, back smoothly down to M2 on the low notes. And it would sound like this. No, it was not a good vowel to demonstrate. Let me try it on ah. Ah. And all to be done smooth, without any gaps going up or down. So that's wild. You know, it's like, that's weird. Yeah, but it's humanly possible. So why not know all that you can do? All that you can be. So you can sing in either M1 or M2 on any held note. And it's important on some level to know which one you're in. But don't choose it based on the sound of it. You've got to do on the sound of the timbre, the resonance. I always like to fool people, and I'll do, and I think I did this last time for you, where I showed how men rock singers can do M2 in the vocal folds, but they do a very blasty, chesty, belty timbre, and people think they're in chest voice. And so they go, oh my God, that's so amazing. And it's so easy to do. And it would sound like this. Now, when a guy does that, it's real meaty sounding because they have bigger vocal folds and there's more meat that is flapping in the breeze. And as you probably know, it's not just the tissue that's flapping, it's the way that it's chopping air. It's really the air which provides the sound, not just that the vocal folds are flapping. So in order for a woman to sing rock, who's, or any belter, where you're taking M1 up high, the chords will be thicker, the vocalis will be more engaged, and the sound will sound more like yelling. You can hear it's meatier. Again, no warm up. Once you learn to do this, you don't have to warm up. You can just do it, and doesn't matter how. Well, we'll see. I'll let you know when I'm 80 if I can still do it without warming up. Please don't determine M1 or M2 by where you feel vibration. Vibration is based on 2 things. Okay, this might be confusing because what I said earlier is that vibration is based on pitch, right? So the higher you sing, the more you'll, in either register, the more vibration you'll feel in your head. The lower you sing in pitch, the more you'll feel vibration lower through your face, your mouth, your upper neck, your lower neck, maybe even your chest, even an M2. But there's another ingredient, for those of you who are really want to nerd out and are really into all this stuff and like what you're hearing from me, there's a second ingredient that can change where you feel vibration, and that is the thickness or the thinness of the vocal fold. So let's say I'm in M1, that when as I thin the vocal fold, vibration will feel higher. If I'm in M2 and I thicken the chord, I will feel vibration lower. So it's on any held note. Like if you're practicing, I think you were doing crescendo, decrescendos in the classical trade, the messa di voce. You may notice that where you feel vibration changes as you get louder and softer. You're, Part of getting louder and softer is the thinning and thickening. I teach amplitude changes, how wide, and I've talked about this in a previous presentation, that the wideness of the vocal folds. This is loud, this is soft. But anyway, I'm probably confusing. I try to tweeze out individual things, but in the end, it's all very, interconnected. But it's best to think that things aren't interconnected if you want to feel like you can do things with your voice that you hear other people doing. Many singers, especially females, can easily learn to produce M1 and M2 on all notes of their range. So it's important that all singers know the lowest absolute low note of their range and the absolute high note. So you can practice taking M1 to the bottom, I'm sorry, M2 to the bottom or M1 to the top. But how can you do that if you don't actually know what you normally can do? But the men that I've worked with, some can, particularly the high tenors, they can do it like women. So our German friend, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, who has the same range as I do. We found out last time, which I thought was wonderful. Probably can do this task, but a lot of the guys they can't. They can take M1 up to pretty close to their highest note, but not to the very top. And I think that's very interesting because the dimensions of the vocal folds. There's this thing, I don't know if you've talked about the membranous portion of the vocal folds. This is the front, by the way. And then there's the cartilaginous portion. It's the ratios are different in men and women, and that might play a part in why baritones can't do this task. In my experience, it could be that there's something with the thyroid cartilage being more pointy and sticking out. So it's another project I'm working on with the University of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that we haven't really discussed
vocal fold physiology. I mean, you talk about physiology, but not anatomy.
Yeah,
yeah, it's complicated.
The different membrane layers, and so we haven't really gone into that.
Yeah, and it's not important, guys. It's not important to know that stuff. I'm still trying to memorize it. There's the 3-body model. There's the 5-body model. I'll probably never have it mastered. But it's still I'm interested in it. It just doesn't seem to stick because it's pretty technical. Okay, now this is a bit of a what did I call it last time? Advanced. That's not what the word is I used when it was like, if your heads are already full and you can't take any more, then please go to the bathroom, go get something to drink for this next one. But the way I teach a smooth register transition going up is that where the break is happening, what I do is I've taught them the thin and thick, they can feel it. We thin the M1 on the note prior to the transition or where they're experiencing a break. So that's this. You just stick your thumb back and you think thinner. And then on the M2, the head voice note, which is the one after the transition, you thicken it. So you're actually controlling your thickening and thinning and your vibrational pattern. And this is one of the fastest ways to solve breaks. And yes, you can do sirens, you can do lip trills, you can do humming, but it makes it more accidental but to me, all of those traditional things are useful. And I also liken it to ironing. You don't have to iron the whole bed sheet. You can just iron that one wrinkle. Just go up and down around the break. But technically, it involves thinning on the way up and thickening on the way down. There's more to it, especially if they're guys who are in head voice and they're having a clunk on the way. I didn't put this in here, but I'm going to tell you, if you're a guy and you're going, ah, and there's this, no, that wasn't a good enough example. Ah, because I'm not a guy. Ah, there's, there's more going on with the thyroid cartilage. There's a movement. You can actually feel like this feeling of more going on. So I have it, I have another tool, another hack for guys, particularly if they're young and they're still kind of in the voice change. They're in the voice change. They can have a clunk, and sometimes it can't be fixed until they're finished with their voice change, which could be 20. So to smooth the registered transition going down, like if I do where it gets clunky. What you do is you thicken M2 on the way down as you head towards the transition. I prefer to use that word to break, because break people get like a complex about it and neurotic. And then you're going to thin the M1 on the first note afterwards. So it's ooh. See, I'm thickening that M2. Ooh. And then you thin the M1. As soon as you hit M1, you got to think thin. So, ooh. So a thin M1 and a thicker M2, and using the hand model, if you're a teacher, add it to your bag of tricks. So a lot of people I don't know which one I'm in. Let me check the time here. I don't know if I'm in M1 or M2. How do I know? Especially if you're sirening, going, I don't know. But here's how you do it. You use the counting test, and people go, oh, that's amazing. It's really simple. You could count to 5 or you could count to 10. So what you do is you have to hold the note. Hold any note on any vowel that you're not sure if you're in M1 or M2. And then you just start counting to 5. Not whispering, just a normal kind of medium volume counting to 5. If it sounds and feels like you're talking, even if it's really high, it's M1. They're clapping. If it sounds and feels hooty and not like you would use for speaking, it's M2. Oh, I need a comma in there. So an example would be, I'm going to do a note. I'm not sure. I know, but let's say I don't know if I'm in M1 or M2. Now I'll count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, well, that's not how I talk. So it's M2. Or likewise, if I do, hey, it's really light, it's airy, it's high. Hey, I don't know what I'm in. I start counting. Hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it just sounds like I'm talking softly. It's M1. So as of now, until further research, I think it's one or the other. And most of the students, and a lot of them are teachers, you just see the eyes pop like, oh, wow. They were very similar in sound, but once I started counting, I could tell the difference. This is one of my earliest, this is Johann Sonnenberg. He's sort of the grandfather of voice research. He has a lot of famous books that are in libraries of many voice teachers. And this was 1995, and my very first, I was at Nashville at the Vanderbilt Voice Center, and I was so excited. I don't look excited, but I was really excited. And I'm using EGG, electroglottogram, to look at different laryngeal heights in different styles, and how, because the head of the Voice Center there, Dr. Tom Cleveland, thought that was interesting. And anyway, and then there's me showing my MRI differences between high chest voice. Back in the day, I would do research that were style related. So I'm belting like musical theater, and then I was doing like a classical head voice. But right now, I take style out of it when I take a look at what's going on. So here is my correct YouTube. I had it incorrectly in my last presentation, my YouTube channel. I've got lots of free stuff, videos, and workshops. And feel free to contact me through my website, email address. This was a lovely group. This was in Riga, Latvia. The most beautiful group of young women I'd seen in a long time. Not all women, as you can see, but that was amazing. I mean, we're doing, looks like we're doing chest support, not chest support, rib support exercise together. I have a lot of products. They're all downloadable on my website, and I'm considering doing a teacher training course, all online. And just let me know, give me your email address if you'd like me to stay in touch with you as that develops. So I think we be done. Let me get back to everybody and stop the share. Tali, I've known a long time. How many years? How many years? How many? 15, 20 years? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, at least that
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
So
She
nice
looks
to see you.
exactly the same, just like me. Well, maybe not the neck, not the neck here. I've got to work on the neck. Okay. Philippe, what do you want? How do you want it? You're the maestro. You're the MC. Do you have
Well, I was thinking,
pointers or anything you want to say, or you want to open it up to questions or call
I
it a
think
day
I
and
think we
say
have
we'll pick
some.
up on Wednesday?
Yeah, yeah. Let's let's connect a bunch of dots here. And first of all, I wanted to say thank you and give everybody a chance right now to say thank you so much. That
My
was
pleasure.
that was great, and we really I appreciate your time and energy. Lisa's got amazing energy. She's like giving me a run for my money, which almost never happens. Most people are
Well,
just tired
you don't
around
see what I look like at the end of the day, drooling.
No, but I do. Every time we talk and work, I'm like, you know what? I just gotta. We're gonna have to talk about continuing to work together because it's
I
just so
think
much
so.
harmony. Yeah. So thank you. It was awesome. I was really considering blending my photo in because I was having the biggest laugh about all of the different terminologies and sentences and things for mix. It's so funny. It just makes me laugh so hard because I've heard them all as well, and I'm yeah, just on board. It's such a popular word, and you can go like I know. I've worked with Leo. I've worked with several people here. I know that people will ask you to mix, or they'll tell artists now sing that in mix, or it's just kind of a thing you're supposed to do, but they're so ambiguous about what they even mean. They don't really know what they mean. That's why they throw it in the bucket, right? It's the sound that this is the
A
contemporary
lighter
pop sound.
sound, somehow a
Yeah.
chest voice that's lighter.
So it was really interesting working with I think Leo. He was singing, had some exams coming up for the project he was involved in, and getting rated on that. And we did some of the work where we actually they wanted this more intensity in the mix, but we actually got the sound they wanted through less effort and more of the
More
acoustic.
resonance.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
intensity is often a word used to mean more ring,
Yeah.
more cut, more. And also another word that has been really bandied about over the decades is spin, especially in the classical work. Can you
Mm-hmm.
put more
Yeah.
spin in it? And I don't know if that means a, a, a faster vibrato, if it means blow more air through,
It,
if it means more ring. I mean, these are all very different
yeah.
things.
They
And I've had teachers, and I don't know again, where do we come from? We come to this journey. We're on this journey, but we only know what we know. And so all these teachers that I had in the 60s, 70s what they didn't know, and there was very little voice science, and they weren't interested anyway. They were passing on information that had come from their one or two teachers who had gotten their information from the 1920s and 1930s and
Yeah.
was all
Yeah.
classically based.
Yeah.
So I was one of those singing students that you don't want
Me
because
too.
I would say, what's a register? What's vibrato? Why is my vibrato too slow? How can I speed it up? Basic things. And people, you would just see them panic because they didn't have a precise definition. And I wasn't just trying to be difficult. I just wanted to be a better singer and not guess at what the teacher was asking me to do. If I were going to do 50 minutes of vocal exercises. You see why I'm kind of against them. 50 minutes of vocal exercises for every 1 hour lesson. I want to make sure that I'm doing them properly and not just building in bad habits, which is really kind of what I did, or where my throat would hurt at the end, or I would say it's not right, and they didn't. So I'm a fix-it kind of person. I
Yeah.
come from a famous family of inventors. I mean, they made silly stuff, but they were part of Americana. If you're American and you're older, you may know of my last name because they were on television since the 1950s, kitchen gadgets. And so I have that kind of brain, which is there's a problem. How can we find a simple solution so people can have that wonderful, eye opening, joyful? That was a great lesson. I learned a lot. I'm singing better, and I can't wait to come back next week to learn more.
Yeah, I that's awesome, and I appreciate that. I love it because you're like, yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds scientific, but I don't know how to do it.
Right. I'm impressed. I'm impressed, but how does that help me? What do I do with that? So I'm a
Yes.
big, like, what do I do? And so hopefully during these classes, you're and watching the videos again and experimenting with the exercises, you'll be able to discover things that you were always able to do but didn't know was humanly possible. And I think that's just fun.
It is fun. Well, let's jump into the chat and just go down the list. So, first we have a question from Leo that about thinner edge means less tissue layers are coming together. What
Yes.
do you mean by the thinner edge and the thick edge?
Oh,
Is it
okay.
the top
So
of the vocal
imagine
fold?
that this is your vocal fold edge. When you thicken it, you might have 4 fingers. Again, not to scale. If you have a thinner vocal fold, you might have the top two or the top one vibrating. So thinner edge is just the more of the top edge that's vibrating. And then when you activate the vocalis muscle, the medial thyroarytenoid, that's the bulker of the edge. And now you start seeing that the bottom part is also it changes the shape of the edge. So now you may have 4 fingers and their clap, Now, exactly how tall these are, I don't know, because when you do camera work, you sing it from the top. But even so, there are some, even in my videos, there's sometimes we go, oh yeah, I can see the bottom edge coming together, and in M1, some notes, and but there are there's some new technology in Germany. I'm going to talk to some people when I'm there in a couple weeks, where they do 3D modeling of the vocal fold edge. So we're going to be seeing more of that, of kind of what are the different shapes of the edge, but exactly as Leo says, the thinner edge, and it's the top part of the vocal fold. Um, One little thing that I don't think I told you about, Philippe, that I think you would get a kick out of, and everybody, is that when you do a glottal attack, when you go ah ah ah, I always thought the chords were like hitting each other really hard, but it isn't because it feels like that. But what's actually happening is that the chords are very tightly pressed, the false folds are very close, and the vocal folds then pop out at a high rate of speed. Someone at one of the conferences said 22 miles an hour. Sorry, kilometer people, I don't know what that is, but 22 miles an hour. So, which is extremely fast a movement of the tissue, and that's what creates the cracking sound of a hard glottal attack. And why loud glottal attacks are harmful to vocal fold tissue is because when the vocal folds move that quickly, the top part of the tissue, of the top part of the vocal fold, there's what's called a shearing force. It'd be like if you are in a car and now you're going 1,000 miles an hour and the skin on your face pulls back. I mean, you could actually sort of tear your skin. So that's why it's harmful. It's not the squeezing, it's the shearing force of the high rate of speed with which they're opening up. Had you heard of that before, Philippe?
I hadn't heard about that
Isn't
before,
that's
actually.
interesting, isn't it? But it's not what it feels like. But
No,
it's interesting to know what's
feels
actually
like they
going on.
smack together, but it's going
Exactly.
so fast. I was just going to
Yeah,
share this. Can
and
everybody
and
see
you can,
that?
and I think for teaching purposes, smacking is a great way to think of it.
That's
Oh,
the
yeah,
shape
that's
of
a
the
good one.
vocal fold. So when you're saying what is the thinner edge is, you're talking about the upper, the part that's more curved out,
Right,
and
right, this part. So this is a thinner edge right there. Now, when the vocalis muscle contracts, it's like making a muscle. So it's making this, bulking it up, and that will then have a squarer edge. So
yeah,
traditional M1, particularly on lower notes, has a more square edge, and M2 has uh, a more pointy edge.
yeah,
We
yeah.
probably
That's
should move. Oh, do you had a question? When
yeah. I
you
just
say
thought it'd be
laryngeal
nice to.
mechanisms, yeah, I think so. I think that when you're talking about laryngeal mechanisms, you should include what's going on with the rest of the larynx, which includes the epiglottis, the arytenoid cartilages, the uh, muscular processes, but specifically the thyroid and cricoid cartilages, and how they play a part or may play a part. There's a lot. It's like a clock, and all of these little parts can move in different ways. So when I'm looking at vocal fold vibrational patterns, I'm assuming that they're not, there's not a lot. I'm not going for a style. I'm not trying to be loud. I'm trying to do everything medium. It took days, that in the Czech Republic when I did that. It took one day just to set it all up and for me to practice holding that heavy camera, and getting the right angle, and then 3 days of samples. Um, so so I think in the 2009 paper, Natalie Henrich is calling them laryngeal mechanisms, which is a great start. But I think let's be precise. If we're just looking at vocal fold vibrational patterns, let's say that. Um, Now, there may be, your question is really good question, is one the result of another. I would say that there may be laryngeal mechanisms outside the vocal folds that are impacting the vocal fold vibration, but not the other way around, I don't think.
Yeah,
I don't think. What is the advantage of singing in M2 but making it sound like M1? M2 on high notes is easy. It requires less subglottal pressure, less support. You're using resonance and enhancing your ring, your brightness, your nasality to make you sound louder. So you can do less tissue that's in collision, because every time they vibrate, they're colliding, they're hitting each other. And M2, there's less tissue in vibration. So there's more time on your vocal clock before hoarseness sets in. So the thicker the edge, or the firmer the adduction, or the louder the sound, all of those three things increase or decrease time on your vocal clock. So if you're doing a 4-hour show, which I would never do, but if you're doing a 4-hour, a lot of singing, or you're doing musical theater where you're singing 8 shows a week, but it's an hour and a half, it's still 8 shows a week. The advantage to singing in M2 is that it's easier on the vocal folds, and you'll be less hoarse because you're doing fake volume. You're doing kind of a fake way to sound loud. Unfortunately, women, when they do M2, can sound weaker, less intense, like they're fake, what some people call fake belt. Like defying gravity in M2. It just does, I would never be hired. Like if I did defying gravity, I'm trying to be really resonant there. It just doesn't cut it. It's defying. It's got to sound like you're speech like or yelling. And then you can do the resonance as you want to. So is it lighter, thinner edge? So are they more flexible? Are they more flexible? I don't know that. I don't know if they're more flexible. And I think vibrato is easy for either. It doesn't make it. I don't think it's just it's easier on the vocal folds, easier on the body because you don't need as much subglottal pressure, but mostly because of how it is a way to cheat and get more time on your vocal folds. Like if you're in rehearsal or you can do M2 in rehearsal and just to save your voice and then do M1 for the give them their money's worth.
For a guy, it's great because Leo's asking a question. Leo has a very high voice, and like you said, a lot of these popular singers that you hear popping out D's and even higher sometimes the rock singers. The only way they're going to do that on a consistent basis is in M2. You just can't take that on tour for 350 days a year. You might be able to get more. A lot of artists will do a little bit more in the studio, but they have their tour version
Yes,
for vocal
yes,
health
tour
reasons.
version. I like that. Yeah, I like that. If you can maintain M1 through the entire range, why the need for working the transition? Ah, ah, they are two different things. There are a few people I have met, very few, who have no head voice. They have no M2. They have only done M1. They're rock singers and girls, and the thing with M2 is it's not just a cheat. It's a color. It's a sound, and so you want to have all the colors of the rainbow. Of the colors of the wind when you sing. So there are times when you want to do M2 because of the feeling. It's the right sound for the. So let's say I'm singing like that, and that's M1. And when I want to go higher, M2 is the right feeling for that sound. And then maybe later in the song, I'll do that sound. I'll do M1 to show that I'm more involved. I'm more emotional. So it's a color that shows emotion. Both are very important expressive tools. So having M2 as an option is important. But for it to have a smooth transition, if you have a break and you don't want a break, I mean, you're not a yodeler and you just want a smooth transition, it's very telling about the general health and flexibility of your voice. So it's important to have a smooth transition going up and down from M1 to M2 to M1. Because if not, it tells you're going to be limited in what you can do with your voice. It's a problem. It's a problem to be solved. And once it's solved, you can now choose M1 and M2 for expressive purposes, not because you're trying to avoid a crack or you get complex. Oh, that's my note. I can't, I'm scared to take M1 up, whatever the nervous anxiety issues are. So it's important as a technician to always be able to have a smooth transition. And if you don't, it's often a sign that you're having, it's a vocal problem to be solved.
Yeah, I think I like to think of it as also just a bodybuilder. If you have all legs and no upper body, or all upper body and no legs, you're off balance.
I agree. It's just an integral part of the vocal mechanism. And also, if you can only do M1 all the time, it's boring. Likewise, I think a singer who can, like a woman opera singer who has no, only can do M2, is boring. You're cutting off an ability to express and emote. Of course, you want to stay in the style. You want to be appropriate for the style. If you're a woman and you're doing opera, typically you're going to transition on a middle C. Unless you're Marilyn Horne, who took her M1 up to a G4. But pop singers of great skill are expected to now, at least an E5, a high E. And the gospel singers are showing us that you can take it to the very top in like a gospel scream, but we all can learn to do that. Oh, Janet. Oh, thank you, Janet. I'm trying to get more intensity into a phrase in a song when it's sung the second. And you can do that by doing M1 the second or third time and M2. That's one more way to have energy. You can be loud. As you continue the song, you can add resonance towards the end of the song, the climax of the song. You can get different ways. You can add resonance, particularly ring. You can be louder, meaning the chords are clapping more widely. You can do it in M1. So there's different ways you can add energy or expression or power. But I like to use the word intensity to more specifically to mean the how much harmonically is coming from the vocal cords, either by having a thicker vocal cord or by having more adduction, but never squeezing. But when you firm them up a little more, closure, that will create an intensity in the vocal folds. But but you can add resonance, and that might be heard of as it's more intense. And it's a great way to do fake volume. The more ring you add, the louder people think you are. So you could be medium volume in your vocal cords while you're singing, but people will hear it as loud, and that's the power of the ick face, the thinking pointy, which is changing your vocal tract in such a way that it's increasing the 2,800 to 3,400 cycles per second that the human ear hears as ring. That was probably too much. Piece of music referral to the field.
But hang on
Connie.
one second. Hang on one second. Let me just point that out, because you went over it real fast. I think it's very fascinating. It's really important for a singer to know. Human ears are tuned to a frequency spectrum. That's where we experience more loudness. It doesn't mean it's louder in pressure. It just means we're very sensitive to it. Like decibels is not the same thing. We're very sensitive to that spectrum. And if you think of Kaya's class, she showed us the spectrogram with the different energies. Yeah, and in that higher spectrum that she was getting the overtones in, that's the one that Lisa just mentioned really quickly in that frequency range. Our ears are super sensitive there. So
do you know why? I have a theory. I presented this at the American Acoustical Society. My theory. Do you have a theory about why are the human ears so sensitive to these particular frequencies and not higher? Because higher, our hearing just declines.
I was the thing that I could identify with, and I haven't done personal research on it, but they say that that's the exact spectrum babies cry at.
That's what I said. That's me. I said that.
That's you.
I introduced that. Yeah. And I actually, this was in the 2005. I actually looked at a baby cry monitor because I thought, okay, what's loud? What's annoying? What sound do I hate more than any? Because it actually hurts my ears. I always carry earplugs with me because my ears are so oversensitive. It's probably not a good thing that they are. So I've got like choices of earplugs to put in. But I looked at online for what is the range of frequencies of a baby cry monitor, and it wasn't exact, but it was a little wider than this 2,800. And if you're a man with a lower voice, your ring is going to be the lower spectrum, and if you're a high soprano, they're going to be on the higher spectrum. So, and I don't teach formants. I just think that's really confusing, and it implies that you're learning to sing by watching Voce Vista. So if you do Voce Vista and you enjoy it, great. I think it's better to learn by feel and hearing, and not by seeing. And so I don't, because we've got to cluster that third, fourth, and it's not. Does it sound piercing or metallic or like chalk on a chalkboard? That's ring. Oh, so Connie, great to hear from you. Uh, yes, not as much because they're problematic terms. So my Connie's question from so long ago was, do you still refer to the feel of front muscle and back muscle? I do, but I'm more hesitant to do it because there's such. I always say they're just a feeling of that when you thicken a vocal fold, it feels like there's some muscular activity in the front of your vocal cords. So I tell them it's not it's just a name of a feeling that front muscle is just give me more front muscle on that note, and they can thicken the chord by feeling more muscular, some kind of muscular action in the front of the voice box. And then back muscle is my traditional term for the longer idea, which is when you thin the cord, you'll feel more muscular action. You don't have to know what it is, but there's more muscular action in the back of the voice box. So you can say, give me more front muscle on that note, they thicken. Give me more back muscle on that note, and they thin in either register. So it has a place, but I can see that uh, it, it could be misinterpreted by people who don't do a 3-day workshop with me.
It's a teaching tool that it's a teaching tool.
Yeah, it's and to me, and I say to all the teachers, whatever works, just that didn't work, plan B, plan C, plan D, because I'm not selling a method. I'm just selling solutions to common vocal problems that are often easily fixed so we can get to the songs faster. Steve, do you constantly switch from M1 to M2 when you sing a song? No, not constantly. No, it just depends on the style. Like if it's a country song, I might use no M2. If it's a rock song, no M2. If it's a pop song, maybe a little bit of M2. And there are different kinds of head voice, different ways to do head voice. I just did a presentation in Paris. Are you impressed yet? 3 types of head voice. And you don't want to use the classical one. It's still all M2 here, but it's the way the vocal tract is shaped and the larynx is placed in the neck will produce. So I'll make sure you the right head voice. But so I wouldn't say it's constant. No, it's just an option. And also when you're listening to your favorite singers, just do what they do. Just do what they do, and they become your teachers, and then you can change it from there. But you really want to know your styles, and you want to have a good role models. So we don't have as many good role models as we did in the 80s. It makes sense that the ear would evolve to have babies survive when they need. Yeah. Hi. Is there time? Oh, Isabella, let's see. Oh, Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday. And have there been studies on vocal cover in classical singing? It's just a vocal cover is just a vocal tract. Yes, it's a certain kind of resonance, and it's you lower the voice box. Here's the formula for cover. You lower the voice box. You widen the pharynx, like I'm a wide-mouthed frog. You lift the soft palate a lot, like an umbrella, like an umbrella. You pull the cheeks up, and and you feel yawny or like you're going to throw up. And that produces a darker resonance, a more spacious, darker resonance that is cover.
Yeah, that's a good question because it is something that even the classical singers get very confused about. What people are looking for the word, cover it up, but it's just giving a little bit more softness and roundness to the sound quality.
But it's darkening. It's taking some of the high frequencies out, right? With the lower larynx, the wider
Yes.
pharynx. We're starting to amplify the lower frequencies. So I didn't realize, Philippe, that cover implied softer as well. I
Yeah.
thought it just meant not as ringy, not as just more of that.
You know,
I'm covering. I'm more yawny. So it's
some,
duller in the resonance.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
But it may
They
be
don't
heard
want
as
it.
softer, but I don't know if it's softer here. It may be because there's
No.
less ring in it,
Yeah.
it's perceived of
It's just
as
they don't want it to get too screamy.
yeah. You don't want all those high frequencies coming out.
Yeah.
By the way, about brightness, which I think I don't know if I've talked about this with this class, brightness where you show your upper teeth, that's the frequencies in general above 4,000 hertz and up. And dogs and cats hear those frequencies as really loud, but humans don't. So when we show our upper teeth, and a lot of classical singers, you do not see teeth, they cover the teeth. So in general, in classical for men and women, it's not bright. It's ringy, minimal to no nasality. And but anyway, it's fun to do the trick when you're around a dog and you do something like, which is the above 4,000 in the brightness range of amplified harmonics. And dogs, because to them that's like, whoa, and humans, we barely hear it.
Well, that was great. Thank you, Lisa. Um,
Sure.
so much fun. Yeah, we got through
So
all the
Isabella,
questions.
are you still with us? Is Isabella still with us? Is she going to come? I just wonder if she's going to be able to attend on Wednesday so we can work together.
Yeah, I don't know. Yes,
Yes, great. Okay.
she'll be
You're
here.
number one on Wednesday.
All right. Well,
That
time
wasn't terrible, right? I
flies.
mean, that wasn't too confusing if you just stop thinking about everything you've ever learned, and then that's really hard, and I appreciate it. It's like people are like, well, I'm trying to take everything I thought I knew, and then I'm trying to make it so they don't go together, and I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
it's
sorry
good.
about that.
I mean, to be honest, everybody, it's just a process. I mean, uh, and somebody's going to come out with something new, and then you have to connect those dots. But
Yeah, I may say, okay, after I do some high speed, I go, okay, I get a little addendum, or I go, no, I was right. But sometimes in science, what you want to be true isn't true, and it's very disappointing. It takes real
yeah,
courage to go, nope, no, that's not at all what I thought. It's
the
very-
scientific process is difficult. This is a tangent, but the thing is, we can experienced singers, when you get really good, you can definitely feel things. And then it is a deception that your perception's not always matching what's actually happening. But so many things not really going to know because a lot of things you have to stick needles in to measure tension. And I mean, imagine sticking needles all along the top of your palate just to measure how much it's getting tensed and where, and then try to sing. Every time you move, it's just going to hurt. And
Or
putting,
you can put needles in your vocalis, in your CT muscles, and you risk vocal damage doing it.
yeah,
So
not worth
needless to
it.
say, I haven't done that yet. I won't.
So we
But
got
I'm
to
going to
go
put
with
them
things
in
you
my
feel.
neck. Eventually, my goal is to put them in all these what are called the suprahyoids,
Yeah.
and that shouldn't hurt. And then too much.
You're gonna be miss.
La-
You're gonna be like that horror movie Pinhead. I'll come and
yeah.
be like have like
Okay,
the
now sing.
it gets crazy. So, but if thousands of singers are feeling the same thing, then there's something to it. There really is something to
So
it.
true. And people over the decades have said things to me like, I had these feelings, but I had no word for it or no name for it. So that's very affirming to me because I've been there myself.
Yeah. So keep going, and the more you sing, the longer you sing, the more things you'll discover.
The more
Thank you,
you'll feel.
Lisa.
Okay,
It's
everybody.
been
Hope
great,
to see you on Wednesday.
and
It was
welcome
super fun
back.
today. Ah, thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, miss you already.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Tali.
And I'll see you all. Let's just take a little break, a little breather break.
Okay.
Come
And
back in
then I
about
will say bye-bye.
five,
Bye-bye.
7 minutes, and we'll have a short recap. Okay? We'll
Oh,
see
thank you, Sam.
everybody. See you in a few
Bye.
minutes.